On this episode, it's National Farmers Day. We answer an online question people are asking about soybeans. When looking for seed to buy next year, we are focused on selling yield and profitability for the farmer. Listen in to see how we are your friend in the field. Joe answers a question about why we have the highest germination compared to the competition regarding soybean quality.
Hi, this is Joe Mershman. Welcome to Cup of Joe, Season 2, Episode number 11. Today we have Tommy and Turk and Ben with us, and today we're going to talk about some of the things that are going on out there in the field and bring you up to date and hopefully help you in your farming operation. We'll start with Ben today. What's going on, Ben?
It's too wet. But I think that trend is hopefully quitting after this last shot of rain that we got on Friday morning. So I'm hoping we have a little bit of cool weather, and John Felt on his weather analysis that he did last Saturday said that things are going to start warming back up. They're going to start drying back up. We're going to have favorable conditions for harvest. But What are some of the things that happens when we have too wet of weather? We end up with multiple diseases, the rots on the crop, like Lynn and I were talking about last week, continues to get worse.
On corn stalks.
On corn stalks. And inevitably, I didn't think this was going to happen, but we're just now starting to see some sprouting on some of our corn that's been
on the ear tips.
On the ear tips. So we're just now starting to see the very beginning of that happening. Those are the fields that I'd absolutely get after first. Put that stuff in the dryer and get it down to 13%. Not 15, but 13.
Anything that's sticking up, especially if it's still upright, you're gonna have a lot more problems.
Particularly with the open husk type hybrids.
Yep.
Water just pools in there.
It'll pool in the bottom there and start a lot of sprouting going on.
So a lot of that last year.
Hopefully they're dropping. The ears are dropping here now.
It's just too much moisture for what we've been dealing with. But there are ways to handle that, and you get the corn dried down to 13%. The damage might be just a little touch higher, but get it dried down to 13% and get it in storage so that you can take care of it. Okay. One of the other things that we have going on is today, Saturday, is it's National Farmers Day. And Tommy and I kind of took a cue. We have some ag talk questions here about from different questions that guys have asked over the past couple weeks, and I wanted to talk about this particular question here that has to do with guys going out and looking at how their beans are yielding.
Ag Talk's a forum blog, right?
Yep.
Where people all over the United States ask each other questions and farmers respond to it.
Correct. So, and I think we get a lot of this questions on why do beans yield the way they do, and how do we raise our bean yields when it comes to harvest when they're looking at two bean pods, and all you guys can interject however you see this. So why have, in the past couple of years, why have many of my beans had two bean pods, and why don't we see more four bean pods when it comes from the bottom of the plant working its way up? So my answer to that question is it all starts with the blooms. A soybean plant has the potential to yield 3 times what we're yielding right now because a bloom is a potential pod for every thing that they run. So the more stress that soybean incurs, the less blooms you have. The more stress it incurs, the smaller the pod size, and then those one step further, the more stress you incur, the smaller the bean is in that pod.
Well, one thing too, Ben, there is the old wise tale that they said, well, soybean could yield more, if all these pods would not abort. But the rule and the information that I've received from our breeders is that soybeans will always put on more pods than what the plant can support. So some of that falls back the opposite way of what there for a while. For a while there, everybody thought, well, we're just getting too much pods aborting or flowers aborting. But the reality of it is the plant will set more pods than what it can support, and then it basically either drops those pods off or doesn't fill. Ends up being exactly like what you're talking about.
Right. But the ways to minimize or maximize your yield is to baby that soybean crops. Who hit the record this year? I can't remember his name.
Dowdy.
Yeah, Randy Dowdy hit the record at 193 or 190 bushel soybeans, and his whole philosophy is all built around this question of maximizing pod length, maximizing bean inside the pod size, and maximizing the amount of pods per node that you have. He has 4 or 5 pod clusters per node, and then those are 3-4 bean pods.
Mitigating stress.
Yep.
I mean, that's the bottom line, and that's the whole theory and philosophy about what he's trying to do down there is mitigate stress every step of the way. So those 2 bean pods, Ben, It depends on where they're at. Are they at the bottom of the plant, the middle of the plant, the top of the plant? And those two bean pods really tell you what that plant was going through at that time that pod was being formed, and that's stress. That's all there is to it. It's stress. Now, what is the cause of the stress? Is it herbicide application? Is it drift injury? Is it
temperature?
Is it
drought?
Is it whatever it is, heat stress. Whatever it is, that plant's telling you when it had stress in its life. But depending on where those two bean pods are, because two bean pods aren't normal for a soybean plant. That's not a normal pod, but that plant adjusts constantly to what its environment is and what stress factor it has.
Yep.
So it's just like application, the R1 cutoff date for some of these herbicides means R1. That's the beginning of flower. So if you're spraying when you got full flower, you're probably doing some stress to your plant.
You're definitely.
And then the Enlist E3, of course, you can go through entire flower. You can go all the way through R1 up to R2. R2 is when the pods just start to form. So you do have a longer window with Enlist E3 to post apply as opposed to the dicamba system, or even the LibertyLink GT27 system, or even straight Liberty.
That's what I tell guys, Joe, is when they're saying, well, my beans got dinged by dicamba, but I didn't see much of a difference in yield. And I say, well, for some of those guys that you're hearing about what the big differences is, they most likely were affected during the flowering stage. And that's what's knocking off pods and affecting yield. And we saw that in the plot that Nolan Wilkins showed us in one of those situations. And then you talk about mitigate stress, or biostimulant helps mitigate stress.
Absolutely. The turpidity on our seed treatment is the whole idea behind it is to make sure those nutrients and whatever that plant needs when it becomes under stress are right there on the seed to get that uniform emergence. And I think that's one of the secrets to high yields too, is uniform emergence.
Correct.
It is in corn, but they're finding it's important in soybeans. So the seed treatment that we put on our seed is much more costly and much more sophisticated than what most of our competitors put on. But at the end of the day, it's going to give you more yield. And, we talk about this all the time. I know farmers want the lowest price that they can buy anything. I mean, why wouldn't you? But on the other hand, the real focus should be on getting the highest yield that you can possibly get, and pay much more attention to getting the right seed treatment to get uniform emergence, picking the right soybean for the right field, getting everything exactly perfect, because extra 5 or 10 bushels more yield is going to make you way more money than saving $4 or $5 on a bag of soybeans.
Joe, I talked to a farmer in Northwest Iowa, and he, he's just came on with Mershman's this year as his first year, and I asked, how'd you hear about us? What decided to make you come aboard? And he says, well, I talked to 10 farmers, and out of 8 of those 10, they had been planting your product, and they had been planting your product for 8 to 10 years or even longer. And he goes, well, a company with good customer retention is somewhere I want to work with, because they're even keel and they're, I guess they're happy with our success. And I told him, I said, that's because of our products, our quality, and our seed treatment. And that's why we have happy customers. That's why we have a good retention with our existing customers. And he said, well, that's what sold me on the product, and that's why I've come aboard.
We just received our market research and comparing Mershman seeds to the major multinational companies. We consistently outrank them with the highest satisfaction. And when they polled customers, we ranked number 1 on customer satisfaction compared to those companies. And that's what we try to do here. We try to do exactly what you say, try to be consistent, try to do what's right, and we focus on the yield. And we will raise the price of our soybeans if necessary, if we see that the value comes back, 5, 10, 15-fold, 20-fold to the farmer. So at the end of the day, it's the yield that lowers your cost per bushel the fastest. And think about it. If you're a farmer, if you save $5 an acre, at the end of the day, is that the difference between prosperity or failure? Whereas opposed, if you get another 5 bushel or even 10 bushel per acre, what does that do to your bottom line? So that's the focus. I think this time of year, farmers are focused on price when it comes to buying, but when they're in the combine, it's all about yield. And when they don't get the yield, they're not happy. And I'm telling you that the best way to maximize yield is to focus on the limiting factors in your field. And then do what Ben talked about. Try to mitigate stress, just like Turk says. Try to eliminate those 2 bean pods. Why are you getting 2 bean pods? Is there something you could have done? And work on all the details, because that seems to be the success in soybeans, is working on the details.
Well, our customers are very satisfied with the profitability. I mean, and again, the farmer from Northwest Iowa, he said that every one of those people I talked to about Mershman's they have been the most profitable on their soybeans with Mershman seeds. So.
Well, we keep our lineup fresh.
Absolutely.
We constantly are looking for better products. Like, for example, this year we're bringing Saltro for sudden death control and nematode control, and Saltro shows a 1 bushel advantage, as you talked about last week, when there's no sudden death out there, and then when there is heavy sudden death, 3 bushel advantage over the standard, which for years has been Olivo. I mean, there's one thing right there. The cost is relatively the same, almost exactly the same between the 2 products. One's going to give you 1 to 3 bushels more yield. That's an area of mitigating stress, because basically when that soybean comes out of the ground, the halo effect is stress.
Yep.
And with the Saltro, you're not having it. It's a good example about uniform emergence. It's all the little details, and that's what we pay attention to. A lot of the other companies focus on one thing. They want to give you the lowest price, really don't care if they match the soybean to your field. And if you have a sudden death issue, they're going to maybe sell you a Levo when already you're behind. I mean, that difference in price has been mitigated by going with a better product and a company that's going to give you some additional information to help you.
Another thing, Joe, is, for the Mershman advantage, so to speak, is our ASMs, they're problem solvers. I would put them against any rep in the field, just for the simple fact of they know what they're doing, they know our products, they know where to place them, and they're problem solvers. So
there's no question about it. I mean, when a farmer has a problem out in the field, typically our salespeople go out to the field and they get as much information as possible. The next thing that happens is they usually call Ben or Turk, or even myself, and we discuss it as a team inside here. Okay, what's going on here? What can we do to help that farmer? And then we go, well, if we don't know, then we go to the next level. We contact our experts, which may be folks that do the breeding, might be the folks at the university, and we have a lot of contacts, not just in our state, but all over the United States. So you really have a team of experts behind you. And you might challenge your other seed company that is coming in there with a low price and say, well, what's behind you? I mean, what do you have? That's what's behind a bag of Mershmans. There is not one problem that goes out in the field that we as a group don't talk about and try to figure out and try to solve, and we're relentless until we figure it out. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important. If I was buying a product, to know that if I was getting a car fixed, it's just not the mechanic, out there. He's got a team of experts right behind him too to get that vehicle back on the road, and that's what we try to do. We're not perfect, but we do the very, very best. And our slogan, "Your friend in the field," that's exactly what it means. When you have a problem, you come to the rescue and do the best that you possibly can.
Well, I think what's really interesting and great about our company is that everybody cares, from the area sales manager all the way to the top, through the management side of things. Everybody cares, just like you get the local advantage at the local car dealership, so to speak.
Well, the culture of a company comes through in the product.
Absolutely.
So, if the culture of the company is, they want to charge as much as they can for the trade or the genetics and maximize shareholders' value, if that's their culture, that's probably what you're going to get when you buy that seed. We know that our success depends upon the farmer's success, and profitability right now is a big problem for farmers right now, and we're just every day kind of trying to figure out how can we add more profitability for the farmer into the seed. And I just think that it's something that is being lost out there.
Absolutely.
It's just being lost. We're going. It's a race to see how cheap we can sell seed. We can sell seed cheaper too, but we're not going to be able to give all this support that a farmer has to have to raise a good crop.
Absolutely, and to be profitable. Yeah. Joe, I wanted to talk about the first yield trials that came out of Indiana here, and it looks like the claim for enlist yield drag is not supported by some of these results.
Well, if you're not familiar with the first test is an independent trial but run by an independent company, and they run both corn and soybean trials all over the Midwest. And then they report them on their website. And basically, I believe that most of them are like 50 entry tests, and they publish the top 35 entries, I believe, something close to that. And the first test was published, came out of Indiana, and what it showed.
It looks like there's 5 out of the top 9 numbers are all Enlist varieties. There's an LLGT27 variety in there, and then there's some Extend. But what's most important is, the Enlist trait form was the number 1 out of those 37 numbers. And Roundup Ready Extend is right in there. But I think what my takeaway from reading this is there is no yield drag. It yields as good or better than Roundup Ready Extend. With the ease of use on the weed side of things, it's kind of a no-brainer on the profitability side of things, Joe.
Well,
I mean, it supports what we've been saying all along.
The yields are coming out of these Enlist E3s and LiberLink GT27 is totally dispelling, our competitors saying there's not yield there. Because, if you get 5 out of the top 9 and you win the trial with an Enlist genetics, and there's not one Asgrow in that top 9, I would say that the Enlist products, besides what we know, and we are this week, we're sending a very detailed linear regression graphs and charts to our area sales managers. We've actually taken some of the information that normally never leaves our office, and we've declassified it so that we can show it to farmers and show exactly what we look at to make the selection of these products. Mm-hmm. And that'll be in our area sales managers' hands early next week. And if you want to talk yield, you want to talk about characteristics, you want to talk about anything about that soybean, I can guarantee you we're going to have the most sophisticated information that we could possibly show a farmer when it comes to yield, based on data from the over 120 locations that MS Tech pulls data from east to west. And we'd be glad to talk data if you want to talk data.
Absolutely.
And we'll continue to see, we got some of our seed growers, we got some soybeans in this year. So far, what we've seen so far is that seed size is maybe just a slightly smaller than normal, but not abnormally small. In other words, we're going to see a lot of seed in that 2,800 to 3,100 range, which farmers like that size.
Those 120 locations, Joe, aren't just a side-by-side locations. They're replicated.
They're replicated data, from the manager of MS Technologies, the folks that we've been working with for the last 51 years. In fact, the truth be known, 2/3 of all the soybeans come from this management group. 2/3 of all the soybeans in the United States come from this management group. So
in some fashion.
In some fashion, yes, in either a percentage or a parent or something. But the bottom line is, when somebody says that these new material does not yield, there's a saying. Only the uneducated have an opinion, and I'm telling you that they don't have any data to back it up. It's the only fallback. It's the oldest trick in the sales game is all other stuff doesn't yield. It's got yield drag. I like what Skip Long, who works in production, and he's out looking at a lot of fields, and he's saying, the only yield drag associated with LiberLink GT27 and Enlist E3 is that you have to drag more yield to town. Mm-hmm. So that's a yield drag that's associated with it. But the truth always comes to the top.
Absolutely.
And this is what we're seeing right now. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's just the beginning of what we're going to see this year on the performance of these products. And not only that, like you said, you get the advantages of you don't have to do the buffers and borders on the LiberLink GT27, and you have less risk to your neighbors. And I think most farmers are really respectful. They like to live in a community, and they want to get along. And the dicamba system is a difficult system. Turk, is there anything coming out of Illinois right now on their changes they're going to make to the dicamba?
I have not heard anything. I'm checking that website constantly, and I have not seen a single update on that. We're looking forward to that announcement, but so far, nothing from Illinois.
Joe, we had a grower question come in. Did you want to?
Yeah, I could talk about that. I guess we're going to call it the mailbag, and if anybody emails us a question, we're glad to answer it. And this one here was a question about our germination. How come Mershman seeds have consistently high germination on their soybean seed? Well, let me tell you a little bit about how the seed industry works, at least from Mershman seeds' perspective. We produce more seed than what we can sell, okay? And that's typical of most seed companies. And the reason why is because not every grower is going to be in a perfect situation like you talked about. We got some growers that maybe have in stress areas, some areas that growers are in the perfect areas. So obviously when we look at all of our bins, a seed company always starts out with their highest quality seed first. In other words, if you've got 20 bins, and you got one that's 99 and then they drop down as you go, what are you going to do? You're going to start with the lowest germination one, which you're not sure you're going to sell, or you start with the highest. We start with the highest. That's why we always tell farmers, the smartest thing you can do if you're working with any seed company is to get that first seed. In other words, seed that we're producing right now, is going to be the highest yield, highest germinating seed. In other words, it's easier to produce 99 germ seed right now in the fall right off the combine than it is once it sits in a bin. The rule of thumb in the seed industry is that every day that it sits in the bin, every month, germination drops 1%. You might say, well, why does germination drop 1% sitting in storage? That's because many times, not every time, but many times we have different fungi that are active in the bins, and they will affect seed quality, okay? So that's one of the things. So we're aggressive in producing seed with our early orders that we get from our customers, and we're aggressive in shipping seed. So usually the best seed is first, but these are some of the additional steps that we go through to make sure we have germination. We use belts whenever we possibly can. We avoid augers in all cases. We have many second and even third generation seed growers. In other words, if you were a kid and you grew up around raising seed, you know how to set your combines. Your dad taught you, maybe your grandpa taught you, whatever the case may be. So we have really good growers, and that's the key. First of all, have really good growers. We have 5 inspectors that are traveling around right now, working with growers right now, making sure that there's no corn in that field, any volunteer corn, making sure there's no nightshade, making sure that everything is perfect as possible. And if there's a problem, we address it. We're making sure our isolations are there. And so we literally drive thousands and thousands of miles inspecting fields, making sure that that field is exactly what. We also, at that time, make sure the bins are cleaned out. We make sure everything is ready to go on the farmer and our grower side so that we have the least amount of contamination. And we also coach our growers if they have any augers that are under the bin, if they have 45s or even 90s, those are a kiss of death because of the fact that they tend to churn and grind up the beans. So we pay our growers to use belts in and out, our legs. So that's one of the things. So every step along the way, what we do is we try to improve the seed quality so we get the best possible seed from the field. Then we bring it into the plant and we over-clean the seed. In other words, we throw away good seed to make sure the seed that's left over is in great shape. We have made some great improvements to both of our plants, the one in West Point, and we work with a custom processor down in Olmsted, Illinois, and that's all a brand new plant. And you learn a lot by putting plants together. Both plants we've raised the quality.
Absolutely.
In this area here in Southeast Iowa, Fort Madison, there's a company that prints wax paper wraps for Burger King and McDonald's, and every time the contract comes up to reprint those logos on those wax paper wraps that you get your sandwich in, the McDonald's and Burger King say either improve the quality or lower the price. And I think farmers are exactly the same way. That when they buy a product from a farmer, they either want additional benefits or they want the price lower. So we work constantly on improving the quality and the product. So this year we've improved our seed treating at West Point here, and in general the seed treatment is very critical to high germination. Many times seed has seed-borne fungi on it, and that seed-borne fungi can rot the seed before it has a chance to germinate. Pod and stem blight is one of the things, and last year we had a lot of pod and stem blight. And we use specific products that scrub the seed coat to make sure that there's no pod and stem blight. So that's kind of a quick surmise of what we do. We work with great growers. We coach them and try to help them to minimize the damage to the seed, because a broken seed coat means the seed was not going to germ. We overgrow our seed so that we don't have any products that are that we don't have to use. We're not forced to use them. And there's an old saying in seed production: you cannot make good quality seed out of bad seed. I don't care what kind of machine you have, there's nothing, if you start with something that's bad, you can't make it great. So we've learned over the years that you have to have a discipline no matter what the sales are. If that last bin is not of high quality, do not sell it.
At the end of the day, you're a seedsman first.
You got to be a seedsman, and my dad says seedsmen are born, not made. So I think there's a lot of companies out there that are run by marketing folks or Wall Street folks that are not necessarily focused on the seed like we are. Because, my family name's on that bag, and so it's an extension of our family, and we want to make sure everything's as good as it can possibly be. So anything else to add?
I think that was great.
Get your long johns out.
Yeah, it's going to a chance of frost Saturday morning, so we'll see when this thing airs if it's how much damage. But we had heard that there's going to be a lot of wind, so I think it's going to be minimal in the southern areas, but northern areas may get nipped a little bit. But my friend up in North Dakota, Peterson Farm Seeds, they're talking snow up his way in North Dakota, so we're at least a little better off than those folks.
They're saying it's as far as central Iowa, so not a little accumulation, but could see snow flurries.
So we'll have our Indian summer like Ben just told us about. All right, well, thanks for tuning in today, and as always, we appreciate your business, and be careful out there in the field, and enjoy your special day today as a farmer. And we're very lucky in this country to have such great farmers that give us so much food that we never have to worry about going to the grocery store and finding empty shelves. So thank you, Mr. Farmer, and we'll see you next week. And Mrs. Farmer, for that matter. Take care.
Thank you.
From sun up to